It's okay. Everybody to their own, right? Each to their own. Okay. President Garvey.
Okay, if the board members can please make sure you have your microphones on, we're going to get started with the committee of the whole meeting. Ready, Bridget?
Ready.
Okay, good evening. The hour being 8:00 p.m. on Monday, August 26th. I'd like to call to order the Brookfield Village Committee of the Whole meeting for August 26th. Can we have a roll call for the committee meeting, please?
Trustee Ketchmark?
Here.
Trustee Cote?
Here.
Trustee Hendricks?
Here.
Trustee Naratsu?
Here.
Trustee Gahuli?
Here.
Trustee Kaluzny?
Here.
And President Garvey.
Here. Thank you. We have several items up for discussion tonight. The first is a discussion of Case 2412, a request for a final plan development for property located at 8845 Burlington Avenue. We have a committee item memo for the village board, but I'm going to ask our village planner, Kate Portillo, to provide a summary of the project and the recommendation.
Thank you, President Garvey and honorable trustees. Case before you, 8845 Burlington Avenue, has the site, which is located to the south of the Brookfield Metro Station, is in the SA6 zoning district. The building on the site stood vacant for many years. It was purchased in 2022 by 3 Green Vegetables, an entity operated by Peter Hallius and John Fairclough. And the plan development process for this site began in 2023. The proposed project will be a 12-unit condominium building. It does have 4 units per floor, a roof amenity accessed from the 2nd floor, and the site itself meets all the off-street parking requirements for the residences. Just to revisit the preliminary planned development approval that occurred at the end of 2023, the board did advance that without the on-street parking that the applicant had originally proposed. So from the preliminary plan development approval, the following exceptions were authorized. Variations for the primary frontage build-to zone requirement from 10 feet to 3 feet, a variation from the non-primary frontage build-to zone requirement from 5 feet to 3 feet, the variation for the minimum side setback requirement from 5 feet to 3 feet for the primary building and 5 feet to 0 feet for the garage, and a variation from the maximum site impervious requirement from 75% to 92.3%. With this final planned development, the additional variation being requested is for the parking circulation aisle. This is actually the entrance to the garage. I do want to note that there's a correction. My PowerPoint is accurate. The code requires 22.5 feet, and the applicant is asking for a reduction to 11.25 feet. So this is a rendering of the proposed project. I will note that this particular rendering is absent of the parkway plantings, but you may have noted in my memo that in the final submittal from the applicant, in consultation with our village arborist, the project is proposing parkway plantings in accordance with Chapter 58 vegetation of the code. This requires parkway trees to be 30 feet apart, and so there is one existing tree on the site, almost right in front of the entrance there on the north side. And the applicant is proposing 6 new trees of the desired species in Brookfield, 4-inch caliper. The applicant also noted on their updated landscape plan and acknowledged that salt-tolerant salt-tolerant species would be installed on the private property landscaping. The applicant, it's not easy to see on the screen, but at the rear of the parking garage, due to its close proximity to the sidewalk, will be installing a bubble mirror, braille sidewalks, and safety features at the request of the Planning and Zoning Commission for pedestrian and cyclist safety. The elevations are here before you, and I will speak to the final engineering. As we look at those, the village has reached a point where there's general confidence in the submittal. I will note that some details are being shored up: sanitary, storm sewer, and catch basin detail. The two engineering teams have been in close communication. Our village engineer noted that there should be a future IGA related to the storm sewer that will go in the alley, and provided comments on the alley paving that the developer is proposing as a public amenity. And there is the other rendering of the structure. The Planning and Zoning Commission astutely noted that there would be blank walls on the parking garage, so that was addressed by what will be not see-through windows. They're essentially, a facade detail to keep the consistency in the design. The developer also called out the specific materials on this drawing as requested by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and in the packet are the images of the material samples. So on June 27th, 2024, the Planning and Zoning Commission did issue a unanimous favorable recommendation for approval, oh, that is a typo, of the final planned development. The vote was 7 ayes, 0 nays, and 0 abstaining. And they put the conditions that these items be completed before the case was heard by you this evening. And so I acknowledge that the conditions that were stated have been addressed by the petitioner, and that's why we are here today. They are here before you if you do have further questions of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Hendricks, anything you want to add as a liaison?
I do appreciate that the petitioner was responsive to many of the points made by the Plan Commission. As Kate pointed out. However, the landscaping plan, as a final landscaping plan goes, it is lacking. I'd like to see, I think, it cleaned up before it comes back to us. It is essentially the initial landscape plan with a bubble, a revision cloud that says that plants have to be salt tolerant. I would like it to be clear what the plantings are, have the plantings labeled on the parkway trees, and as nice as it is that it says that these should be salt tolerant, it's still calling for arborvitae and tater tots, which by the way is not a botanical name. I'm sorry, I'm a landscape architect and this is driving me crazy. Tater tots and arborvitae are listed as all of the foundation plantings. Both of those are arborvitae and are sensitive to salt. So being right next to that sidewalk there, I'm afraid that the petitioner, the owner of this building, is going to end up with just a whole row of dead evergreens. So to avoid that, I would appreciate if when this came back to us for a vote, if this plan, the landscape plan, were cleaned up and it was clarified what those plantings actually are supposed to be. Other than that, like I said, I appreciate that they've been responsive and have come back to us and demolished the building that are in the process of demolishing the building that is out there and moving forward. I'm excited to see the development moving along.
Thank you, Trustee Hendricks. Before I ask the rest of the board, I'll give if the applicant is here or their staff is here, want to make a presentation, or if there's any other public comment. We have kind of several items. If anyone's here just on this, I'm going to go one by one. So is there anyone in the public in the audience that would like to make any comments regarding the planned development at 8845 Burlington Avenue? Is the applicant, anyone want to make any comments? You don't have to, if you want to address any concerns about the plantings, or you could deal with staff on that in between. I'll open up for discussion. I think if Trustee Hendricks is suggesting, I'll see if the rest of the board goes along with the recommendation that before we vote on this, I mean, right now, I'll try and get a consensus from the board. If there's a consensus, I could put it on the 9/9 agenda.
May I make one more comment?
Sure.
Please, most respectfully.
Absolutely.
I did speak with the village arborist about that concern. And there's an alternative consideration. This is private property, and in general, the way the village would regulate private property, if there were dead foliage that needed to be addressed, there would also be the approach of a property maintenance violation. Certainly with the plan development, it is within the purview of the board to put whatever conditions they wish. This will be a owner-occupied building, so I just want to acknowledge that staff did give further consideration to that concern, and that there, although it's not immediate, if there were species of trees that were not faring well, or perhaps, the association themselves could opt to clear their sidewalks with a more appropriate means that would be kinder to trees and shrubs, then I just wanted to acknowledge that that was discussed in our conversation.
Okay. Again, if you want to say something, you can. If you don't want to, I mean, staff responded a little bit. I'll open up to board discussion if you don't want to say anything at this point. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, questions or comments from the board?
Kate, could you explain the parking variance for the circulation aisles from 22 feet to 11 feet?
Sure. Let's see here. So the garage entrance, which, Stevie, I know we're having this conversation about zooming in, but it's right here. And our code in general for off-street parking asks for a 22 and a half foot, so 22 feet, 6-inch opening for 90-degree parking, which these spaces are considered. Just to note that the garage spaces on this part of the enclosed parking area are all accessed off the alley. So there is a single-car garage door here. It is, according to staff research, standard size for a garage door. But we acknowledge, and the village engineer acknowledges that those are tight turning ratios. That's, so they're asking for 11.5 feet, where our code, 11.25 feet, so 11 feet and 3 inches instead of 22 feet and 6 inches, as our code requires in general for off-street parking.
So with the engineer reviewing this, I mean, we're confident that it can make the turn from the alley into those?
There has been no evidence that it can't be made. It may need to be made with caution, and we've measured some vehicles. This residence, if you are looking to park your pickup truck in there, may not be the right residential parking for you. I can neither confirm nor deny how difficult that might be. The center interior space does offer an opportunity to, turn into your space, probably at least a 3 or 4 point turn.
And then could you clarify how much of the alley is being paved? I mean, it's just to the edge of the building, correct?
That's correct, yes.
But you commented something to the public benefit.
Well, so they're doing that solely at their expense, and
That
they're-
section of it.
Right, and there will be a storm sewer there as well that will, of course, through the IGA become village-owned.
And the alley would, I mean, the alley remains village-owned, but the upkeep going forward in 25 years, when that needs to be repaved, that's on the village. Correct.
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, thanks.
Just to clarify, the 11-foot, variance is required in order to meet the off-street parking requirements?
The architect may wish to speak more to that, but they've designed the enclosed parking to meet the required 1.25 spaces per unit. They do get 1 credit for the area where there's bicycle parking in the interior.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments from the board?
During, I don't know if it was the initial layout for planning and zoning, when I was at that one, there was a lot of talk about the parking garage and then the party deck or whatever it's called on top of the garage. And I can see in the rendering, or I saw in the rendering, that there was some concerns. I don't remember if it was from neighbors or if it was from planning and zoning commissioners about privacy concerns with the neighboring and having everybody looking over them with the neighbor areas. But I see that you put up ideas for an semblance of privacy around it. So I really appreciate that you took that into consideration so that they'll have some kind of peace of mind that there's some kind of separation, whether or not they can see through or not, but that does work kind of. So I really do appreciate that was added in.
Other questions or comments from the board? And just so I'm trying to give the village attorney the appropriate direction for drafting ordinances, I mean, I want to put this up on September 9th if staff and the applicant feel it'd be available, but I mean, Trustee Hendricks raised an issue about the specific plantings, and staff gave a response that, you know, there could be viewed a different way because it's on private property. I just want to, how does the rest of the board feel about Trustee Hendricks' concern about the plants listed, or is it something that we think that staff and the applicant are going to come to an agreement to that a majority of the board will support, or, I mean, I haven't heard a lot of discussion on that topic.
I'm willing to let staff and the petitioner work it out before the next meeting.
Okay. So with the directions and concerns you pointed out, and I mean, I know this applicant has a history of working with staff coming out of the Planning and Zoning Commission in previous village board meetings from the preliminary plan development. If there's a consensus from the board, I'll have the attorney draft a ordinance to approve the final plan development that, obviously you can consider and vote on the September 9th meeting. Do we feel comfortable with that time frame, getting it done by September 9th?
I would expect that should be acceptable to the applicant.
Okay.
President Garvey,
Yes.
to Trustee Hendricks' points, I think she has a valid point on that. As Kate mentions, maybe some of this is a little bit out of this board's role, but I would think the developer hears this and understands that he wants his plants to live too, and wants things to look good. So those are things you probably want to take in consideration there.
Okay, so we will put this up for the September 9th meeting. The next item is discussion of case 24-13, request for a variance from section 62-75 bulk yard and space requirement to build an enclosed porch for 3132 Park Avenue. I'll turn it over to Kate. Once again, the board has a very detailed memo, but I ask Kate to make a presentation for the audience and the rest of the people present, so.
Thank you so much, President Garvey and honorable trustees. I have the case before you today for 3132 Park Avenue. This is brought forward by Ben Thurnhofer. Him and his wife have lived at this property since 2018. It is a parcel in the A single-family district, and the home, as they purchased it, is in fact has a building cover. The property has a building coverage of 33.5%. That is slightly above what code allows. So I think for those that are not familiar, Our code, or the village code, speaks to the different single-family zoning districts and what the building coverage, maximum building coverage is to be. That ranges between 30 and 40%, but in this case, they have a legal nonconforming building coverage amount. This came to light because a building permit application came in where the applicant wished to convert what is now a concrete patio to a three-season room, not with any heating or cooling, and then relocate their concrete patio that's shown there to the south. And so the request is to, in fact, increase the building coverage to 36%, so 2.5 additional percent building coverage for that sunroom area. They are still within their allowable and required green space. So with that proposed improvement, the property would have 51.3% green space. Just to quickly summarize the request that Mr. Thurnhofer brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission, he noted that the property has an old-growth evergreen tree in the rear. It does, they wish to keep it. It does leave pine needles and sap on their existing concrete patio, so that is their intention with creating a a more usable space with having a sunroom, and then relocating the concrete patio, which would be further away from the tree. So this went to the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 25th, and they did issue a unanimous favorable recommendation for approval of this variance by a vote of 7 ayes and 0 nays and 0 abstaining. That concludes my report. The applicant is here this evening as well, if you have any questions for him.
Thank you, Kate. Would the applicant, would you like to say anything? You don't have to say anything, but is there anything you'd like to say to the village board?
No, sir. I think Kate brought a perfect summary of the project, so I don't have anything to add.
Thank you. She always does. Question, is there anyone in the audience that has any public comment on this particular item at this point? Okay, questions or comments or discussion from the village board?
It's like a good improvement.
It does.
Okay, as always, the board will review the recommendations of staff and the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we will put this up on the September 9th agenda to vote on it. You don't have to be present. You can be present. If you're not present, staff will let you know the results after the meeting at September 9th. Thanks for coming out tonight. The next item is the discussion of a potential construction and funding options for the OSLAD grant proposal for Creekside Park. This is a topic that we've spent a lot of time getting some input on. I'm going to turn it over to Luke Gunderson, our Parks and Recreation Director, to make the presentation. And again, we have very detailed information in our packet regarding what the process so far, but without further ado, Luke Gunderson.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Good evening. I'm going to try to make this as short and as sweet as possible, but I do want to make sure that we cover all of the information with the proposed plan we have here. So the Creekside Park Master Plan and 2025 OSLAD concept. The initial is the existing conditions that we have out at the park. If you guys can see, Creekside Park is the area circled in red. That is the area we're primarily focusing on with the concept and the proposed plans. But if we also wanted to make sure that this portion of the park area is also identified, that you'll see in the master plan here with the trails. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce Megha Patel. She is spearheading on the task force for the South Kiwanis Trail area. And she has a presentation Would you like to go? Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Megan, thank you so much for all your help. If you want, do you want to come up to the podium, or
You can go to the,
wherever it's more comfortable for you?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right,
And
bear
thank
with
you for
me.
being here.
It's, I want it to be comprehensive, so this is 3 pages, but I will.
Please take your time. I know
Quickly.
I appreciate we have a busy agenda, and it's been a long night, but these issues are all important, so please take your time. I appreciate the concern, but.
My name is Megha Patel. These comments are prepared on behalf of the South Kiwanis Park Planning Task Force. So about the past year and a half, I've had the privilege to help lead the South Kiwanis Park Planning Task Force to gauge community interest and support for a new natural area opposite of Creekside Park from Salt Creek and the proposed bridge currently referred to as South Kiwanis Park, which is where these trails are shown here. As some brief history, volunteers associated with the Brookfield Conservation Commission began ecological restoration, primarily removal of buckthorn, at the start of the pandemic more than 4 years ago. During our restoration activities, we began to see a greater potential for the site. With the village, we successfully applied for a grant through the National Park Service Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program to assist us in site planning, including meaningful community engagement and concept design. Upon award of this technical assistance grant, we formed the South Kiwanis Park Planning Task Force, which comprised of members of the Brookfield Conservation Commission, Brookfield residents, including residents from South Hollywood, village staff, and the National Park Service. As part of the community engagement effort, the task force conducted various forms of survey. The National Park Service provided their expertise in planning by assisting the task force in developing a meaningful opinion survey. Surveys were distributed through 2 distinct farmers markets, one in the spring, the second closer to the fall. And at these farmers markets, the task force was able to engage directly with well-represented cross-section of Brookfield residents and have one-on-one conversations about the concept. Surveys were also distributed through Facebook groups, direct email, a Cub Scouts Pack 90 meeting, and even through the Hollywood Citizens Association. We received about 314 responses to these surveys, 295 from our general outreach to Brookfield residents, and 19 from the Hollywood Citizens Association. These opinion surveys weren't our only means of connecting with Brookfield residents. Our local Cub Scouts Pack 90 volunteered to go door to door and gain feedback from North Hollywood residents about their experience in living adjacent to the North Kiwanis Park Natural Trail. The task force hosted a focus group with South Hollywood residents at the Hollywood House last fall. And just earlier this year, we hosted an open house for all Brookfield residents in this room, where residents expressed their excitement for these projects. The reason we wanted to share this feedback in a public comment is that there are 3 primary things that we learned from the community engagement process, which applied to Creekside Park and the proposed bridge. First and foremost, during our engagement, we learned that over 90% of surveyed residents wanted South Kiwanis Park to be connected and accessible, either by a bridge or tunnel over the BNSF Railway or a bridge over Salt Creek. Based on safety and logistical concerns, a bridge over Salt Creek was considered more feasible than a railroad crossing, and this proposed Creekside Park concept addresses this feedback. The second thing that we learned was that South Hollywood residents have a preference for a primary trailhead for South Kiwanis Park to be located at Creekside Park to reduce vehicular traffic to the South Hollywood neighborhood and parked cars in general. This proposed Creekside Park concept addresses this feedback as well. Since the bridge would serve as a trailhead, there's plenty of street parking already available adjacent to the metro station. And finally, we learned that South Hollywood residents were concerned about public safety or a fear of, potentially patrons of Irish Times wandering through the woods and into the neighborhood after closing time. The planning task force listened and took this concern seriously. We consulted with the Brookfield Police Department, Parks and Recreation, and Public Works. Ordinance section 38-49 states that parks are closed from sunset to sunrise. Any concerns about people accessing parks after sunset could be reported to the police department's non-emergency number. There are other ordinances about public intoxication, disorderly conduct, and noise, which could be reported as well. We took an inventory of bars throughout Brookfield and informally asked our neighbors and friends about their experiences about living adjacent to bars or near bars, and nothing really stood out. We asked the police department to validate this as well, and there's no spike in crime, especially harassment or trespassing. Bars close, but this makes sense. These are Brookfield residents. This is us. Regardless, there's no lighting proposed at South Kiwanis Park. When, with the dense forest canopy, this would be unattractive to wander through at night. We learned something else, separate from the survey process about public safety. The Brookfield Conservation Commission has observed evidence of unofficial pedestrian train crossings during our restoration workdays from the South Hollywood neighborhood across the BNSF railroad tracks. As a tragic statistic, in the year 2022 alone, there were 39 people killed by trespassing across railroad tracks across Illinois. This figure does not include the non-fatal injuries. Locally, the BNSF Railroad will be responding by installing over 18,000 feet of fencing between Berwyn and LaGrange to prevent trespassing. The distance to walk around from South Kiwanis Park to Creekside Park, through the Hollywood neighborhood, across Brookfield Avenue, around the metro station, that's about a mile, despite them being directly across from each other from the creek. Installation of a bridge connecting South Kiwanis Park to Creekside Park is a public safety measure to prevent unofficial railroad crossings. We know that there's a vocal minority which opposes the proposed improvements. However, we know from our robust community engagement process that there is a strong support for these projects among Brookfield residents. We also want to underscore that these design concepts presented today for Creekside Park are not new. In 2014, the Village of Brookfield published the Open Space Plan. Improvements to Creekside Park and providing connectivity to South Kiwanis Park were presented as goals in this Open Space Plan. And even more recently, the Village of Brookfield published the Comprehensive Plan in 2018 and also listed these similar goals. The open space and comprehensive plans weren't developed in a vacuum, but there was a robust community engagement process associated with them, including surveys, workshops, and meetings. The findings by the South Kiwanis Park Planning Task Force aren't a major revelation, but rather they corroborate and provide additional data to support the existing plans by the Village of Brookfield, and they underscore the community enthusiasm and support for these projects. On behalf of the South Kiwanis Park Planning Task Force, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for all the work and input and process that you went through. The outreach is really important, and I think you went above and beyond, which we appreciate. Back to Luke.
Thank you, Mega. That just shows the tireless efforts that they have put towards this project and all of the community outreach that we have done to get us to this point. What I'd like to do next is give a little more detail on the Creekside Park OSLAD concept plan. And who I'd like to invite up now is our representative from White & Company, Daniel Wilson. He's a landscape architect. They're the ones who are helping us apply for this OSLAD grant. Daniel.
Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of like walk you guys through the plan. I'm going to point to the board so it's a little bit easier.
Sure.
So you guys can follow along better. So we're just going to like start when we enter the park here. So that'll be like number 9, number 10. There'll be some little receptacles located here. We're also going to develop a trailhead sign that'll be located right here at number 9. Kind of gives a layout of how the South Kiwanis Park and all that works over there. Then we'll go south. We'll be along our playground area here, which will be a port and play surfacing, kind of like what we're doing over at Elwood Park. This will have some bench seating along the path. We will be doing some native landscape restoration on this side with an interpretive sign kind of highlighting the different plants that are in there and how that benefits the ecosystem. Due to the excavation, we are going to have some little mounds here to fill in. We are going to replace the ornamental fence that will be running along the entire length of the park. It's currently a chain link that's not in the best shape, so we want to change it out to match the existing ornamental that's along this property side here. 15 is that existing outfall. We do want to take some time to clean up this edge to provide a nice view over into Salt Creek and into the South Kiwanis Park that's over there. Coming around, we do hit our shelter that will have some game tables underneath there for seating. We will also have additional bago games off to the side here. Number 7 is located here, which would be a restroom building, which would be a 1-vault unisex toilet. There would be no running water. It would just be pumped out by a service vac. And there would be hand sanitizer in there for after you use it. Then we would have our access up to the bridge with our bridge abutment and the bridge going over Salt Creek here. We do have to do an elevated ramp here to get up high enough to be out of the floodplain and provide enough clearance over Salt Creek.
Thank you, Daniel. If you guys have any questions for Daniel in regards to the plan, while he's up here,
Sure.
This would be maybe a good time to ask any. And what I'd like to also do is maybe go to the next slide. This kind of gives some more of the, like a picture of the amenities that'll be out there. As you can see, the restroom building is the single stall unisex. It kind of has a wood look with stone base. It is all cast concrete.
Yeah,
Cast concrete. So the maintenance it will be low on it. There's a picture of the 20 by 20 fabric shade sail. Some of the signage at the bottom with the bagos, game tables, just to kind of give some of the visual to some of the amenities that'll be there. And then that's just the initial idea for the 8-foot wide pedestrian bridge that is proposed. And then we can do is we'll go to the next slide. So during our community meeting that was held August 20th, we provided 4 options for playgrounds to the community. And out of those options, this option, as you see here, was the one that was voted on the most.
I'm sorry, Trustee Cooley, did you have a question about the previous slide? I mean,
I did. I saw one of the pictures, looks like it had like a bollard, with a light fixture on it. But, and it was one of the
Oh, where
close-ups,
the
I
game
think.
tables are at. Yeah, this is really just focusing on how the tables.
Just the
are
table.
be
Could-
ignored.
Could you speak to the lighting in general, unless you're gonna get to it, Luke? I'm not sure.
We're not planning on doing any lighting within Creekside Park at this phase.
Okay. If I recall historically, one of the issues in Creekside Park was kids or somebody hanging out there at nighttime and, causing some vandalism, and I can't say they were kids, people. And the lighting was an issue. So I know it's kind of been a historic thing, but I haven't heard anything recently, but it's been kind of dismantled, right, for a bit.
Well, it was indicated, because the park's closed at dusk, I mean, in terms of if there's security issues, I mean, there's I think the thought is not to light it up, it's to encourage people to be there after dark. And then I think the police department has plans to, patrol and go from there, but I assume that was the debate versus putting light in for security purposes, which would attract people after hours, and with the residents in South Hollywood right on the other side of the bridge, we don't want to encourage people to use the park and the bridge after dusk.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, the intention is to follow with the ordinance that our parks are closed at night. Dawn to dusk is when it's open, and then after dusk it is closed.
So
we
even
didn't
the
wanna
bridge, right?
encourage-
Nothing on the bridge either.
Nothing on the bridge either.
Yeah, correct.
No safety lighting, okay.
Okay. I knew you had something, I don't know if you want to continue on with your presentation. If any board members have any questions, maybe jump in when the slide is up, or I'll give you a chance to talk in general, but we're pretty free-flowing here, so.
So for the park that was voted on, out of our 26 attendees, 14 of them voted for this one. Daniel, if you want to just go through a couple of the amenities that are included on this park.
On this concept, we kind of went with more of a nature thing since we were looking at being right next to South Kiwanis. We do have the 2 to 12 structure, which is the large structure here. So we do have a small deck here with a slide that comes off for our young kids that are 2 to 5. Then you're able to access up to get to about a 6-foot deck here with your double slide, and then you're up to an 8-foot deck with a twist slide here. Where's the picture? Maybe not. So there is like these rock climbing walls on the backside. Kind of gives that 5 to 12 age more of a thrill going onto this right here. And then we have different play composites here for the 2 to 5s, rocks and stumps that they can have imagined to play with. We also we're able to include this public market. That is a little playhouse piece. Really brings in that adaptive play, imaginative play into the playground for kids in 2 to 5. We do have a spinner and some play panels in this as well as some swings, 2 belts, 1 ADA and 1 tot.
Thank you, Daniel. And from the feedback that we received, out of the 26 votes, 22 of the votes did go towards Burke playgrounds. We provided 2 different manufacturer playground options, and Burke was the more heavily chosen playground structure. So the next slide. So what we did was we broke it into 2 options. I'm going to give a little more detail on option 1. So option 1, we approached it in a phasing. So we do a phase 1 and phase 2 approach. So amenities for phase 1 would include the playground, the shelter, the restroom building, game tables, bago, native plantings with their interpretive sign, wetland improvements, and then it would be installing the bridge abutments on both sides to help us prepare for a future bridge, and that would come in the phase 2 portion. Phase 2 would include the bridge and trails, and then limestone screening for park to make it accessible. There would be an added fishing outcropping on the east side, a proposed nature play pod, contemplation space, native plantings with interpretive sign. So some of the amenities that are added on the phase 2, if to get some familiarity with the OSLAD grant, it's to help give points to help it more rise the ranks in being chosen. So then we had to add some of those amenities. And Daniel, he could speak to any of those amenities if you guys have any questions to any of those.
Just a clarification.
Yep.
I mean, as it says pending, I mean, we do not have a pending grant application out there or a grant award
Correct.
for this, correct?
Correct. So I noted it in there as, this is the time here. If you guys would like, I could skip to the timeline portion. Would that help? So September 13th is our grant submittal date. We wouldn't actually find out if we receive the OSLAD grant until next year, sometime between January and April.
And then the timing for that would be the following year?
Correct. Here, I'm gonna skip to the end so you can see the, so great. So with this proposal, kind of what we're talking about now is what the option we're looking to pursue. Part of the application is we need to have 50% match funding for an OSLAD grant. So what I'm presenting today is the 2 options of what are proposed for the budget. But the timeline for the OSLAD project, we need to have it submitted by September 13th. The grant award is sometime between January and April of 2025. If we are awarded the OSLAD grant, construction documents would be between May and September. We'd go out to bid October 2025, and then potential construction would start March of 2026.
So this is on phase 1, correct? So, I mean, we're talking 2 different projects here, really, right?
So what?
You asking if it's 2 different grant applications or
Right.
just
Correct.
1 grant application with 2 phases?
Correct. So the discussion tonight, to bring it back, is we're going through 2 options, and these are the funding options. So what we're looking at is board direction on which funding option do you think would be feasible and that we would pursue. So as I presented, option 1 is here, and then option 2 would be essentially putting it all into one. This gets all the amenities from phase 1 that I presented just before this. The only additional is that the bridge is included into this option.
But you said the bridge was included in option 1 as well.
Correct, but not until phase 2.
And one of the things staff are more I'm concerned about, as well as the finance director, this bridge is very expensive. And OSLAD grant amount is only up to $600,000 no matter what the project is. Their max grant award is $600,000. So, okay, so option 1 includes the bridge. so you break it into 2 years, the village is still on the hook for $1.4 million of the grant. And I've had just preliminary conversations with the finance director, and that's a big number to come up with. I thought we were looking at options without the bridge to see what that was going to be, price-wise.
So option one, phase one, that does have the bridge abutments in it.
But why would you build I'm sorry.
So the whole idea of this project is to increase the connectivity. So increase the connectivity, we needed to include the bridge with the identified Creekside Park as the trailhead for that new amenity open space area that we've been identifying as South Kiwanis Park.
Do you have a cost for just the bridge itself? Like
Daniel, do you know that?
I cannot
just the
remember
bridge?
off the top of my head. I know it's close to a little bit over $1 million for that bridge.
Okay.
Bridges are not a cheap item, so we are looking at doing a 150-foot span bridge currently. That would include doing the abutments, any restoration needed, wetland impacts, because we are going to be into the floodplains in those areas. Those are just common items that we have to include. There's also contingencies for design, construction, A&E services that also get factored into that. So with running those numbers, I'm pretty sure it's right about $1 million for the bridge itself.
Okay.
But Luke, am I understanding right that the bridge is a key part of the application to improve our chances of getting, I understand the cost, but I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting your answer correct, that the bridge is a essential element to tying the two together to improve our chances of getting the OSLAD grant in general?
Do you want to speak to that, Daniel, about
So
the
the
bridge
reason that we're
specifically?
showing it in 2 phases is because, yes, the bridges do cost a lot, and getting that additional 600 lessens it on to the village itself. So breaking it out into the 2 phases, with phase 1 being the Creekside Park developments that you're seeing here and the concept, along with the bridge abutments, we're able to factor in some of that cost for the bridge abutments. That would include the grading to get down to there, any restoration work we get done ahead of time would all go into that phase 1. So then phase 2 is really just purchasing the bridge itself and then doing a limestone path from that bridge back to the road, so you have the accessible connection. The additional things that are listed, the fishing outcropping, nature play pods, contemplation space, and the native plantings with interpreter sign, that helps make that grant more competitive. So when OSLAD's reviewing this, they're just not seeing like you're trying to get money for a bridge itself. There's actually other things that are going into this, and you've increased your connectivity between the east side and the west side. That links everything together.
Maybe I'm missing something here, just to clarify. So this is one grant application with 2 phases to it. Is the 600,000, are we getting 1.2 million? Are we getting 600?
So it would be a grant application for each phase. So in phase 1, we're applying for the OSLAD grant there. We get that one. Phase 2, we would also reapply for the OSLAD grant to get another 600,000.
Okay, so when you showed that timeline, that's for
That'd be
phase,
just for
That's just for phase 1.
phase 1. And in light of how successful we've been with OSLAD, I mean, is it conceivable we get another OSLAD grant for phase 1, number 1, but then for phase 2, how quick could we do that after that?
You can apply the following year. So as long as they have the funds for 2026, you could reapply for that grant then.
But how is it looked at? I mean, we'd like to get an OSLAD grant every year, but, I mean, is it looked at, well, Brookfield just got that, or Brookfield got one 2 years ago, Brookfield got one 3 years? I mean, is that taken into consideration?
That's a small part of it, yes. What OSLAD likes to do is to fund bigger projects, and having multiple phases kind of helps sell that to them. So they're able to see that you're really trying to improve your park spaces in your community.
Because without phase 2, I mean, without the OSLAD grant for phase 2, that's all on us. Or we wait and apply. I mean, that's without the bridge. That gives us Creekside basically done.
Well, it's Creekside with the bridge abutments, but no bridge until we get the next.
General question on Creekside. I drove by there today. I mean, we talked earlier in the year when the construction was going on, everything was pulled out. Is that open and functional
Yes,
right now?
Yep.
Okay.
it is open.
All right, that fence on the
We
back,
still-
we
yep,
need to
it's so-
fix that fence on the backside.
Yep, the fence on the backside is up.
There's a section that it's missing the top post, I think, so it's just kind of like, I think it might be taped off. I mean, the wire mesh is there, but there's repair work.
Yes, the top pole.
Yeah.
And the fence is sagging a little bit.
I think it's off.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is functional, so I mean, the park is functional for now.
Yeah, correct. We still have a 5 to 12 play structure there, as well as swings, as well at that park.
Can I ask a question about additional grant funds? So the OSLAD grant is one opportunity here, but does it look good or bad if we're pursuing other opportunities to add on? So if we see other grant opportunities to help contribute towards the bridge or contribute towards the trails, or that second phase, to help lessen the cost for Brookfield, does
No,
that
OSLAD
help the
doesn't.
application?
They don't view that as a negative thing. They actually like to see you trying to get other funding sources as well. Another one that would be good for especially the South Kiwanis side would be the Regional Trail Program. That's a grant that is run through the IDNR as well. It's not consistently published, but when it is, it's a 80-20 match. So the RTP will fund 80, and then the village will just have to fund the 20% of that, up to like 250,000. So going for different grants does benefit you with that.
But that grant, would that cover a bridge? The one you, no, that, I mean, I guess, I'm hearing the concerns and obviously.
Well, that was one of the questions I was going to ask. Do we have any idea if OSLAD has ever funded a bridge before?
We reached out to the OSLAD grant staff. We were told that the items that we have listed out would be considered part of the grant. OSLAD staff does no longer recommend if it's a good project or a bad project, but they did say that all elements that we have proposed would be fundable.
For phase one, have they seen phase two or?
We reached out about the bridge itself and all of Creekside development together.
Okay.
So just to clarify, the village financial commitment would be about the same for both options, is that?
So for
1 point.
phase one of option one, the village cost would be this. And that's essentially what I'm proposing now and recommending is the phase one approach for option one. So the total village cost for that portion right now would be this number here.
I guess I'm just curious as to why, the pros and cons of option one versus option two, where we would only be going for one grant and also including the bridge. Is it just more attractive? I mean, you just said that the phasing shows the commitment to the open space, but.
So with OSLAD, it is funded through the real estate tax. This year is 600,000 matching. Future years, no one knows exactly what that matching is going to be. It could be less, it could be more. It's just, we are looking at a second phase to really maximize, get that 600,000 if possible. And then just the rest of it would be on the village, just to make sure that you have that and complete that connection from east to west side there.
Right, but with option two, we would be doing that in the first place, right?
Correct.
But if I'm reading staff correctly, option two is a strong budgetary, I mean, I'm sure we're going to have issues, or it's going to take some creativity to come up with a village match for phase one, which would be $769,000 to come up with $1.6 million.
Thank you, President Garvey. There is no change in amenities between option one and option two. At the end of it, if option one and option two are complete, it is the same project. The only difference is the funding mechanism. Option one provides some extended years to contribute from village general fund. Option two is general fund all in for our matching contribution. So it's just how we're approaching the funding of the project. As we said, bridges are very expensive. So in this discussion, the board has shown support to pursue the OSLAD submission for September 13th for fiscal award in 2025. Right now, we want to really emphasize the cost of this bridge. Mega did an incredibly wonderful job explaining the background of that connectivity into South Kiwanis Trail area. So providing the board the background on how those two projects are interrelated, the connectivity that's going to be provided by this pedestrian bridge, while also taking into account it is a very expensive item. And how we intend to fund that with this initial OSLAD submission this is the time to discuss removing that bridge element potentially, and submitting that OSLAD grant for Creekside Park only, and potentially tabling that piece of the project in the unknowns of funding for Phase 2 for OSLAD submission, as well as potentially directing staff to identify some other grant opportunities for that particular piece. So if we submit this OSLAD grant, as it's being proposed right now with the visual and the pedestrian bridge, we are kind of committing ourselves to completing that bridge in that second phase or sometime soon within the next 3 to 4 years, because we're putting those abutments in, because we're kind of preparing it for a bridge. So right now the discussion is, do we want to fund this project extended over the next 2 to 3 years with the bridge? I believe what Luke has expressed is staff does not recommend option 2 and going all in. That would be a large contribution from our general fund for this project. But the discussion on what amenities to include within this OSLAD submission, and do we incorporate that bridge element in option 1, or do we pull that to identify some other funding opportunities?
Okay, so that helps a lot, and thank you. And to maybe to put Doug at ease, because I see Doug grabbing his chest, is option 2 on the table for any board member? I mean,
No.
I don't see how we can potentially, if we get good news and say we get a $600,000 OSLAD grant, are we prepared to dedicate $1.6 million from the general fund next year or the coming year? So, I mean, just to narrow the discussion, is option 2 off the table for everybody?
It's off the table for me.
Yes.
Okay, so that narrows it down. Now, what that brings us back to is, option, we have to, I think Stevie said it correctly, that there is a desire from the board to proceed with an OSLAD application, and we have to do it by September 13th. I think now the discussion has to focus on, is that an OSLAD application that includes the planning for a bridge in the future, or does it just involve, now I say just, does it involve improving Creekside Park without making the first step towards the bridge, or does the board want to look forward to Phase 1 completely as listed with the bridge abutments, and then figuring out, we all understand that we can't guarantee, or that it's not automatic, that there'll be a OSLAD opportunity available or an award going forward to get the second $600,000 for that. Do we want to build, plan for that after hearing the connectivity issues and the desirability of connectivity? I think I'm just trying to narrow, I'm not trying to steer anyone any particular way, but I think what staff needs to hear is, do we want to go forward with Phase 1 as listed with some putting in the bridge abutments, or is there another option to amend the application and just I don't want to make improvement to Creekside Park? So is that kind of laying it out the right way? Okay.
Not to throw in another question, but I'm also concerned about the restroom building. I was at the public meeting, and there were a lot of neighbors to Creekside Park there. There was, I think, a lot of concern about that restroom building in that room. I know that I can say, I used to take my kids to this park all the time when they were little. It was one of the most charming parks in town. And I worry about putting a vault toilet in there. Those buildings feel more like nature preserve buildings to me than the sort of charming little playground that really is the only playground for all of the people in that part of town, by the way, that they can easily access. It's hard to imagine a outhouse, essentially vault toilet building right there on top of that playground. I don't love that idea.
Yeah, that was definitely a discussion point for the public meeting as well as the commissioners. I think after most of the public had left, we did discuss that. I think one of the arguments made by Commissioner Whitehead was, this is a public space, not just for the neighbors of South Hollywood, although it is a great amenity for them. And also, I think your reference to its proximity to nature trails supports that, you know, having all of South Kiwanis and people walking through and that connection with the park, I think it would be nice to have that amenity there. But I also could do without, so I guess I'm a little bit on the fence on it.
And I suspect it's also a costly
That's true,
addition to
yeah, it
this
could
project.
help with costs.
I think it would be more attractive to me if we were able to at least pull it further from that's sort of center stage right now with the current design. Perhaps if we pulled it further away to the other side of that trailhead, to the other side of the bridge, as far as the design goes, that might make a difference.
The only issue with the vault toilet is they have to be serviced, so they would have to be able to get a pump truck over there. So if we move it across, that just, I'm not saying that we need to have it, but that's why we kind of located it where it was, so it would be an easy access for that.
I mean, I will just share that, you know, I was part of the comprehensive plan steering committee, and this was discussed, you know, years ago, being part of the commission. We've been working on South Kiwanis for a really long time. This has been something we've discussed quite a bit. I think with Creekside Park being under construction and the National Park Service technical assistance all coming together at the same time, and then this OSLAD grant opportunity coming right away, I think it feels quick to like put all of that together and have time to think it through, but it is a great funding opportunity. And we just happen to have all of those plans ready to go where we have not in the past when those opportunities have come together. So I just want to thank the South Kiwanis Planning Task Force again for all of the time and commitment to have the plans available to be able to submit something like this that shows the connectivity, that shows that this could be done, because I don't think if we had just come upon this grant and was just trying for Creekside Park, that connectivity piece, we wouldn't have had the readiness to move forward with a grant application. So whether it's this one or a future one, having all of that ready to go and the story behind it and the public comment and the community input, I think really strengthens this or any future proposal. Whether we go for phase one, we don't get phase two, but we're able to find another grant, we still have all of this background and work that's been done to support that effort, which is really great. So I just want to applaud everybody again for being ready for these types of opportunities. So thank you. And I am curious, does the restroom need to be an amenity to be a successful
No, it does
grant?
not.
It's not like it must have restroom?
No.
Okay.
I think it just adds points for the
Sure.
grant.
Right, but-
That's what I
essentially
wondered. Does
the
it
restroom
or
is.
not?
Yep.
Makes them more competitive.
But we're all parents here, and how many times did you go to the park and as soon as you got there, you know, your kid's like, I gotta go potty. And so it's an amenity that I would like to have, whether it's at that location or moved off a little bit more or wherever, but a restroom amenity is important when you go to a park, because I don't know how many times you had to go to a park and all of a sudden you're like, wrap it up, now we gotta go find a potty somewhere else. And so if it's an option to have one, I'm totally in favor of having some kind of restroom or some kind of facility for that. As one of the other commissioners had said, this is for everybody, not just for the people that only have to walk a block to go to the restroom. So I am in favor of having some kind of facility there. As far as the bridge, so not too long ago, the Conservation Commission hosted a venture into that area to age trees. And so while we were out there doing that, you could easily see the need or the want to have that connection between the two sides. And the fence at the, and having a fence along the railroad tracks at the same time. So I would like for it to be a trailhead and still connecting to it. And if Doug is not having a coronary over there, if we could have, if it is reasonable, I like the idea of still moving forward with this. As Trustee, I'm gonna say Trustee Katie, Trustee Kaluzny had said, you know, we have everything seems to have fallen into place at the right time. I am totally in favor of moving forward as long as we can absorb that cost going forward.
So you're in favor of
I am in favor of
option
moving
one,
forward.
phase one with?
Option one with the bridge.
Okay.
Phase one, phase two, going forward as it stands, and having a facility to use the restroom while you're at that park.
And so, just to help further the discussion, so with that, if option one, phase one with the bridge, I mean, can we come up with when we win the $600,000 OSLAD grant, can we come up with the 769.6 when at the time of the grant? I mean, is that something, I mean, obviously it's budget discussion, but in general,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the strategy can be, let's go for it, and then we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
very funny.
Thank you very much. But it's a big, I mean, that's a big nut to crack that we would have to plan very carefully for.
Okay. I mean, in general, just, I mean, with the project, it's obviously, it's a commitment. And I guess it's just, how does the board feel about the confidence going forward? Because, I mean, if we do option one, phase one, and we invest $769,000 and we put in the bridge abutments, and phase two is not guaranteed to be funded by OSLAD or anything else, I mean, the board might have the hard decision of, do we abandon the bridge idea? You know, the abutments will be there, but I think I'm hearing we'll have to build a bridge within a couple of years, 2-3 years. I mean, I have incredible confidence in staff to find other grant opportunities, and there was talk of this being part of a member initiative from Congressman Garcia and other things that, you know, those other opportunities might come up. But could the board, you know, I guess it's which project do you want? Do you want a Creekside Park? And if we don't put in the bridge abutments or plan for the bridge now, let's face it, we're probably not going to put a bridge in any point in the near future.
We could also zip line across.
I like that idea, but that would be
A rope
a lot
bridge,
to zip
something.
line.
I think it's,
In the interim.
it's a big vision. It's a big vision for the community, for this natural spaces that we hold pretty dear here with the Oak Savannah and this South Woods, and just the, you know, our tree canopy that we have over Brookfield. I think it is a big, big vision, so it's a pretty big decision. And a lot of times I know we want to get like satisfaction right away. You want to see the park built and then usable and whatever. So this would need to be something that we really commit to, you know, over the next few years, to make sure that if we start it, that we're going to finish it. And just kind of try to stick to a timeline as best we can. But it should definitely take a little while, I would think, even with the other grant. It's still going to extend it out years, but
Is there, I'm very pro-bridge and pro this project, but I'm just curious, if we move forward with phase one, option one, phase one, and we get the OSLAD grant, and we continue to look for funding opportunities, even for the phase one, is that an option?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
there's the other grant that Daniel mentioned as well as an option. And then obviously, outside of those two options, we're going to be looking for any other state-funded grants that would help us with this project.
I think to note, and something not mentioned quite yet, while this is in the purview of IDNR and park space improvement, because of the placement of this park, the connectivity that would provide to Trailway, we have some large developments being proposed and planned, just a block and blocks away from this park space. It is our closest park space aside from Kiwanis to our downtown district of Grand Boulevard. Once the density is created and those buildings are in place, there is value in creating that quality of life space of trail connectivity. And it does allow for that east and west connection between Brookfield and a transit-oriented district. And it does meet several goals throughout our master planning, transit planning, and transportation planning. So
That's a good point, Stevie. I think one of the things, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
One of the things that someone brought up at the public meeting was the connectivity for the residents in that area, especially students who were going to RB, to be able to go across that bridge and more easily get to RB without having to sort of backtrack across at Prairie. So that was another consideration.
Could you talk about the estimated cost for the restroom building, what I'm looking at here, the 48,000 and the 36,000?
Do you have those numbers? So we did reach out to a manufacturer. So the 48,000 would just be to purchase the restroom building itself. It would come as a fully built structure. They do have to install that and like set it on foundations. So that 75%, that 36,000, that would be the installation cost that would be done by a contractor to build your foundations, make sure everything's set level, and connect the building to the foundations for that.
So 84,000.
Yep.
Okay, and again, to try and just, I guess the board's got to make a, kind of a bold decision here. I mean, we've taken phase 2 off the table. I think that's an agreement. Is there a consensus from the board? I mean, I'm looking for a consensus. The staff's got to submit this application by September 13th. Do we go for phase 1 with the bridge or without the bridge? I mean, and with going without the bridge, let's face it, we're not going to put a bridge in probably afterwards or look for funding just for the bridge itself. There's a chance that we get some of the abutments in at the OSLAD, and then do we want to just commit to looking forward to, hopefully getting phase 2 and getting that as well as looking for other funding, or do you want to just do phase 1 without the bridge? That's what I'm looking for.
I'm pro-bridge.
Phase 1 with bridge.
Trustee Gahuli?
Bridge.
Same.
Bridge.
Notice no one's looking at Doug when they're doing this. Okay.
I like
And-
phase 1 with the bridge, but without the restroom building. Sorry.
And,
potty.
I mean, well, Trustee Hendricks, is your desire or suggestion to remove it and have no facility? Obviously, because a full bathroom facility would.
Porta potties are so much cheaper than $84,000.
How does, I mean, they have their, and I think staff saying that there's a point value to it and an amenity value to it.
Sure, but you could also take the nature play pod and put that in phase 1 and you get those points. It's just a number.
I'm looking, and again, I'm just trying to frame issues here.
What's
so.
the priority of it in terms of the points?
I don't know if it's a priority necessarily in the point factor. I think it's just the idea of it being the trailhead of the 10-acre parcel on the other side. It's the general one that comes with those types of spaces. So that's the essential behind it. It's not. I wouldn't necessarily look at it as points. It does help the points. It does look like a nice facility that's there. It can't be tipped over by our fellow teenagers who like to do that kind of stuff. It's fairly graffiti proof with it being a cast in concrete. It's a lot easier to clean, and then it actually comes with a spray that goes on it that'll actually clear those graffiti marks off quick. So it's just a nice amenity besides a porta potty for the park.
And I think these are the things, I mean, I think I can picture them at Waterfall Glen maybe, in DuPage County Forest Preserve District, and maybe Graw Mill and things like that. Are these the types of, I mean, I think.
Very similar to those, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again,
This is also a lot denser than those areas. And there's a lot of housing right up next to it.
We're already $2.5 million into it. Having a nice potty is having a nice potty. Might as well have the nice one, as opposed to, like they said, teenagers pushing them over. 2 years ago, I think somebody set the one in Allard on fire. I just might as, I don't know. At this
If
point.
there is consensus on pro potty, we can request White to identify access to push the location of it farther to what I'm hearing is bridge.
what with the caveat that they have to be able to access it. So, I mean, if the potty's not I never thought we'd be talking potties at 9:15.
Sorry, I
But no,
still call
but
it a potty.
it is an
It's a facility.
It's a valid, it's an extremely valid point. It's because I know it came up during the public discussion, and it's an area of concern, so it is important. So
I also know it was a concern to not be on the South Kiwanis nature side of the trail. So having it be in the park where kids might be playing
right,
makes more
That's the
sense
whole
to me
point.
than having something across, but there's still access to it.
right.
I think, in addition to like kids and families coming, what we've been really positioning Brookfield as well as a destination, through our Visit Oak Park, and I just picture people coming, getting off the train there, whether they're going to Irish Times or anywhere in the area there, or any of our other restaurants or shops or the zoo, and adding this as their destination as well, the trails, and that could be when they might not know the area, having a restroom there could be really helpful as well. But it's just another draw.
All right, I mean, so it seems like there's a consensus from the board, I mean, because I know time is short, I mean, the application has to be submitted September 13th, so I think what I'm hearing from the board is to submit the application, and I assume there's some flexibility in terms of when it's awarded, what we do, what amenity, I mean, I guess we could debate.
So with the OSLAD grant, what is written in the grant becomes part of the grant.
Sure.
So if you're not sure about the bridge, but you kind of want to see if you could get it, we can go into the grant without that. We can add amenities to it. We just can't subtract what's in the grant. So if we put the bridge in the grant for this option 1, phase 1 with the bridge, then that has to be funded. If we just do the abutments without the bridge itself, then if you can find the money, then you could add the bridge to it that way.
That's what I thought we were doing.
That works.
Okay, I'm just making sure.
That's, you know,
Sorry.
that, yeah, I might not have
Sorry,
stated
I got
that.
confused.
Yeah, no, that's the direction from the
Okay.
board. Okay,
Great.
is that clear enough?
Yep.
Okay. And I want to thank all the public that had input in this and comment. Actually, you know, before I do, I'm going to ask, is there anyone in the public that wants to comment on this before I give final consensus? Okay.
How many kids are
Yeah, Brian, if you could step up to the microphone, please. We all know you, but step up to the microphone and give us your name.
I'm international lawyer, 898-339.
Okay, could you state your name,
Brian
please?
Sabrowski.
Thank you, Brian.
How many kids get hurt at the parks? Is there any statistics on how many kids are getting hurt at the parks?
At this park in particular, parks in general, Brookfield Park?
Just how many kids are getting hurt?
We don't have statistics about how many kids.
There's not on any kids getting hurt. Hard to believe.
Okay,
Hard to believe.
all right. Thank you. Mrs. Dufek, would you like, can you make it up, or do you want to, I know you got. You can, just you can stay there. Go. No, stay there, stay there.
My concern is this grant you keep talking about, Creekside and the bridge, is that grant also going to include the trails in South Kiwanis Park? Or is that another grant, South Kiwanis Park? I'm confused about, I understand the bridge is going to bring people over into South Kiwanis Park.
Correct.
But is that grant also gonna pay for the trails in South Kiwanis Park?
It is not. So the grant and the funding and the amenities that are included in this is what the grant is funding. It's due to the high cost of the bridge. There was no extra room to add extra trails in as well as a part of that project.
Okay, if it's not going to include South Kiwanis Park, what's gonna happen to South Kiwanis Park? Are they gonna have to apply for another grant for the trails that they've been talking about, the walking trail path?
Yes, the trail that you see here on the master plan were the ones that we identified through our National Park Service grant that they did all the planning and organization for. Those are what is proposed trails that are planned to go in as well.
Okay.
But that's not part of this application.
But not
This application has a September 13th deadline, and we're applying for this, and when other grant opportunities come up, we'll look for funding opportunities for the trails for South Kiwanis Woods.
Fine, I have another question. I understand that the ordinance for the parks are dusk to dawn. Do they have a problem in North Kiwanis Park with patrolling, the police? I've ridden by there, Kiwanis Park. The kids are on the basketball court 11:30 at night. How do they control the ordinance dusk to dawn? What's gonna happen with the bridge?
The police department will do the patrols that they, I mean, if there's children playing in the park after hours in North Kiwanis Woods, I'm sure the police on their regular patrols back and forth see them, or there are cameras there. In terms of the order of priority, if they're enforcing or working out the cases, they'll deal with them as if they feel that the children in park after hours, they'll kind of deal with the other issues they have going on first and then maybe get the kids out of the park. But they'll patrol just like they do every other area.
I just think it's, that bridge is gonna create a problem into South Kiwanis Park.
Okay.
And we've always had neighborhood watch.
Well.
The neighbors call the police when the kids are there at midnight carrying cases of beer into the woods and partying. I know that's a part of growing up at midnight.
You will still be the neighborhood watch captain. We're counting on you. So we know you see everything. So we'll police. I'm not trying to be funny. The police will enforce and we will protect that area. We look at it also as a public safety. We don't want kids crossing the tracks, and as the discussion and input is, I think the board just wants to move forward with it that way. So we.
When I call the police, I don't have to give my name. They know my voice.
Well, there's people in the police department that know you, so they will. Thank you, Mrs. Dufek. There was someone else. Who else wanted to make a comment? Yes, sir. If you're able to come up to the microphone.
Yes, I can.
Thank you so much. If you could just state your name.
My name is Steve. Last name's Eddie. I live on Arden Avenue, really right across the street from South Kiwanis. I would say that I was initially in favor of the idea of having a bridge connecting these two, but I feel like the more I've talked with people that live in South Hollywood, the more I feel opposed to it. I guess one of the first things that I would mention is that I was kind of disappointed that the meeting on Tuesday was advertised as being to just help pick out playground equipment for Creekside Park. And then it seemed to turn into a discussion for a park that's obviously, more than 10 times the size of Creekside Park. That I don't believe that this wasn't the intention, but it could suggest that maybe people felt like there's opposition in South Hollywood or other parts of Brookfield to the bridge. And another question that I would have is do they think there's a likelihood that people are gonna, if there is a bridge put in there, are people gonna come and park near that intersection of Arden and Riverside to get on a train to access the train station over in Brookfield? That's a concern I have. I don't really want more parking there. How much research has gone into the effect on this area for both the woods and our neighborhood about flooding after heavy rainfalls? When I saw that it would, the bridge would be about $1 million, I feel like $1 million could be better put into trying to reduce the amount of flooding that we have in that area. That intersection at Arden and Southview, that does back up from time to time. And I feel like maybe it hasn't backed up as often since they put in the new, they did put in new sewer inlets, but this is really the first time I've seen any, listing for how much money this is gonna cost. $2.6 million is a lot of money. I mean, okay, it's, $600,000 is the OSLAD grant. It gets very wet around here, and this whole area gets very swampy when it rains, and I feel like I haven't really seen a lot of information about how does this affect how the corner will back up or not back up. I guess another thing that one of the last things that I would mention is, I walk around this park quite a bit, and I do like the idea of having maybe some trails that go through it. I think people could probably get to it the same way that they have always gotten to it, the same way that I've gotten over to, to go to the Irish Times or go to Creekside Park. That South Hollywood neighborhood is, that's kind of a unique thing to have woods and creeks that really go around three sides of that neighborhood. And it is very hard to get in and out of, but I think a lot of the people that move there, that was one of the features that attracted them. And it's one of the features that attracted to us as well. I mean, we looked at houses in several different areas in Brookfield, and having the woods across the street from us and having that wildness was one of the things that really sold us on that area. Let me see if I have anything else here that I would mention, but I don't want to commodify everything, but has there been any study of how a bridge might affect the property values that are in South Hollywood? I think initially people have the idea that the bridge and more connectivity is a great thing, and I felt that way at first when I was hearing about this, but I don't know how to say this, but I spoke with a few people that live on the other side of Salt Creek, and they've talked about people coming up from Ogden Avenue along Grove. The term that they used was staggering, and that doesn't really sound like a great thing that we want to be inviting into this South Hollywood area here. I think that there's no question that by building a bridge, we would be inviting a lot more people into these woods, and by extension into South Hollywood as a whole. And I don't know that, I don't know, I guess that's just, I think I'll end it on that note.
Thank you for your comment. And I think you heard about what the outreach, I mean, you're talking about the meeting the other night. I mean, there's been no attempt to hide what this project is or the south of, I mean, the committee and the staff has taken great lengths to use every method to inform people of the projects. We've talked about them at public meetings. In terms of the commuter parking issue, I mean, there will not be people will not be parking there and going to the train. We'll take care of that if that issue ever came up with parking enforcement and stickers and things like this. That's not going to be the intention, plan, or allowed to have people use that as a parking access, because that's not going to happen. And in terms of the enforcement of people going there after dark, again, I have all the confidence in the world in our police department. I mean, we do know that people try and cut through that way and go over the bridge and the railroad tracks and everything else right now. So we do think, I mean, I think in general, the board sees that an investment in the parks and the nature that we have will improve property values as a whole in the village. So we're not going to abandon or not keep an eye out for South Hollywood, but I think that's the way the board's looking at this, and that's what a lot of the public input has shown, so.
Okay. That reminded me of one other thing. From the meeting the meeting that happened last, I think that was Tuesday on the 20th, I would characterize most of the sentiment about any bathroom as being, let's not have a bathroom of any sort. It seemed as though people, I think maybe one person was vocal about having it, but once her kids get a little older, she'll, maybe that'll change. I don't know. But it seemed, I would say that most people seem pretty strongly against having any kind of bathroom or porta potty in Creekside Park or in, I certainly don't want it in South Kiwanis, but it seems like most people were against it.
I wasn't at the meeting, but I know the public input there, and there's been other public input, and I mean, the board's basing it somewhat on their experiences too and stuff. I mean, we don't want people using, when they have to go, we don't want them using the woods or the park. Sometimes parents make that decision. When you got a kid that's got to go, we don't want them using the South Kiwanis Woods or anything as a restroom facility or anything like that. So we're gonna make the application and see what we come up with, and as we go forward, and as we do with every decision we make, if there's things that we need to change going forward, and enforcement and lighting and additional patrols, we'll do whatever it takes if and when this project happens. So
All right, thank you.
I appreciate you for coming out tonight.
Okay, thanks for letting
Okay.
me put in my 2 cents.
Anyone else comment on this particular issue? Okay. Luke, you feel like you got enough direction from the board at this point?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to everyone involved in the process. It's been a very lengthy process. Thank you, Mega, and your group. All right, is the board okay? We're going to keep going on here? Doug's itching to get up here and talk about the audit. So the 2023 annual audit report, the board received a copy of this earlier in the week, and thank you to the staff for making this available to us earlier in the week with the heavy packet. It was helpful for us to be able to review this ahead of time. But this is our annual audit report and management letter. I'm going to turn it over to Doug Cooper, our finance director.
So this, is this on now? Yeah, there it is. This audit is covering the year, the calendar year ending 12/31/23. A couple of points here before I turn it over to Ed. I would like to say that it was an unqualified opinion, meaning there were no material misstatements or omissions in the financials. The reserves that fall into the general fund are at 24%. And if you look at the audit report, and Ed might tell you about this also, the very couple of front pages is called the management discussion and analysis. And I say this every year, but that really is a synopsis of what's going on financially for the village in 2023. If you really want to learn about this, that would be a good place to start reading, is that one there. We will submit the document again to the GFOA for a Certificate of Achievement in Excellence. And the last thing I have here is, you got a PDF. If you would like a hard copy, I do have them available. Just let me know and I can put one in your mailbox. So, all right, so this is Ed Tracy. Ed Tracy is the partner from Selden Fox. This is the 4th year Selden Fox has been doing our audit. They are located out in Oak Brook. And with that said, I will turn it over to Ed for his presentation.
All right, thank you. Thanks a lot, Doug. I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. As Doug mentioned, this is our 4th year working with the village. We certainly enjoyed our time so far working with Doug and his team. They've always been very helpful, cooperative, and ready for us when we come out, so we certainly appreciate that. Doug did mention that the report will be submitted to the GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association of America, for a Certificate of Achievement and Excellence in Financial Reporting. You received that last year. I fully expect you'll receive it again this year. Then the report, when you submit a report to the GFOA, you add some additional information that's not required in a regular audit report, some statistical information in the back of the report, which really provides like some 10 years of data and stuff like that. It's really some really useful information, so I encourage you to not only look at the MD&A, the Management Discussion and Analysis, as Doug mentioned, but that back section provides a lot of good information as well. Doug did mention our independent auditor's report is unmodified, so that's the highest form of assurance that we can give. The financial statements are fairly presented. We only made a few small adjustments to the fund financial statements. One was when we prepare a report, you can't show negative cash in a fund. Sometimes cash will be negative in a fund. It's just where the money came from to pay for an expense. So we have to make some kind of adjustments between cash and what's considered like a receivable payable between funds, just to eliminate those cash deficits. That was one adjustment we made. The only other adjustment we made in the fund financial statements related to like the net pension liability and your other post-employment benefit liability in your enterprise funds. And that's only because those reports come from actuaries, and we got them right at the start of the audit, so we kind of did them in conjunction with Doug during the audit. But those are the only adjustments we made to the fund financial statements. We make some adjustments to convert those fund financial statements to the government-wide financial statements that you see at the front of the report. And that's just those government-wide financial statements are just more of a long-term focus, long-term assets, long-term liabilities, things like that. We do test internal controls during our audit to see that the controls as represented to us are being adhered to, they're being followed, and they're performing as designed. We did not find any exceptions in our control testing. We found that the controls were in place and being followed, and we didn't have any. As a result, we didn't have any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies that we would need to include in our management letter. So our management letter really just kind of provides some information on some upcoming standards that will be effective in the next few years, just to give you a heads up on those. There was one standard that was effective this year related to leases that we took a look at. So there was some new financial reporting that's required for leases in the government-wide financial statements. And so we took a look at some of the leases that you entered into this year and did kind of a calculation of what would be called a right-of-use asset and a lease liability. But we found that overall they weren't material to the government-wide financial statements, so we just made a past adjustment for those and you continue to report those as you have in the past, because it didn't change in the fund financial statements, so expense minutes are paid, but this would just affected the government-wide statements. But other than that, let me go through all my notes here. No, other than that, I don't think there's anything, again, just limited adjustments, no issues with internal control, so just overall a clean audit.
Thank you. Thank you for all your work with staff. I know this is a very time-consuming process, and I know Doug and his staff and a lot of departments are involved in this, so thank you for the work on this, everybody. I know the board's had a chance to review the management letter and the audit. Any questions or comments from the board?
No, I just thank you for all the work, especially from the finance department. Did a really great job. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the board? So Doug, there's no specific action needed here other than it'll be filed appropriately and we'll go from there.
Maybe a mic drop or something.
Okay. Thank you for coming out tonight,
Sure.
waiting through the evening. I appreciate it, and thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the last item we have up for discussion is a recommendation from Chief Caravello for an agreement for secured lockup of arrestees at the Berwyn Police Department. Chief gave us a very detailed memo that talks about the past history in terms of when we did consolidated dispatch services and worked with North Riverside and how prisoners have been dealt with so far, and recent change in circumstances and an opportunity to work with Berwyn. So, Chief, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Garvey and the Board of Trustees. I won't go through every part of the memo, as I know you've all read through that. But again, just to summarize, we've been engaged in our current setup for lockup of arrestees, the temporary holding of arrestees. Usually, almost all the time, it's for one evening to the next, unless there's a continuing investigation. And so that, since 2018, has been at North Riverside Police Department. It has worked out well until this point, and we have identified that there is hopefully what we believe is a better option for us to engage in. The current setup, as you've seen in my memo, requires staff time from us as well as North Riverside, as well as their dispatchers. It's not the ideal setup, but it's what we were all able to do, or what we've been able to do with what we have, because we don't have enough volume, even with all the communities combined, to have 24-hour lockup keepers, state-certified lockup keepers watching the arrestees. So currently, we are mandated by best practices to check on the arrestees in lockup twice every hour, and also on the 15-minute marks with the assistance of the dispatchers through video, security video footage. It's laborsome. When other circumstances arise where an arrestee becomes more volatile, usually it always requires, transport and evaluation in a hospital, but from there it could demand that an officer be placed with monitoring from that point all the way till we transport to the courthouse. That being said, Berwyn Police Department has that option for us now, as we have learned to adjust from what we're doing now by engaging in IGA with Berwyn Police Department. They will now take over, if we do this, all of that as far as monitoring goes. They have 24-hour lockup keepers that are on staff with them that can theoretically even transport from Brookfield to Berwyn, handle processing for us, continue to monitor. Now, if there is a hospitalization requirement, if there's a need for evaluation and potential inpatient treatment, then we will get called and requested upon to go to the hospital. But absent that, it removes us from the process then. And they even will, again, offer to assist by transporting these prisoners to the Maywood Courthouse. So it seems like a pretty, viable option for us for a more secure and hopefully a more efficient process moving forward. open to any questions.
Questions or comments from the board?
Chief, was there any other cost with dealing with North Riverside other than our staff time? I mean, like here, you see the direct costs with Berwyn. Did we have anything with North Riverside?
There were some minimal costs associated with that as well. It's not clear if it was always, requested or dispensed the funding on that from both, but there were costs, there were minimal costs associated.
So with Berwyn, is there any cost other than the per incident, per day, per?
No, Trustee Ketchmark. This is, there's no monthly charge, there's no annual charge. It is based on the utilization when we have, and what's also has changed, as you may all know, with cite and release and a lot of the bail reform, there's actually much less amount of people that we actually do house than what we have been housing historically over the last couple of years. So again, as it is only, pay per use, we anticipate that these costs would not be too high.
And I know it can vary, but can you put any kind of number on that?
Yes, approximately over the last 2 years, 22, 23, we were under 30 incidences where we would house an arrestee for the evening. It was between 22 and 27. So that's been the average over the last 2 years.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
And, with the manpower issues and staffing issues, I mean, to have an officer or two officers tied up on transporting someone even the fact that they do the fingerprinting and processing seems like such, and that they're coming, and I understand, I was questioning why would Berwyn want to do this, but they built the facility and they want to use the facility and pay for the facility in a way. So when Chief first approached me about it, it almost seemed too good to be true. I'm like, why would Berwyn want to do this? But I understand that they built a facility this big, and as Chief pointed out, the changes in the law, they're detaining and holding less people, and to justify the existence of the facility, they've reached out to other departments at a time when we basically needed help, and other departments are moving towards this. So this would require us approving an intergovernmental agreement at the September 9th meeting to go forward with this. And as always, if there's changes needed or it's not working out, I know Chief will bring it forward and give us updates on the process as it's going through. So we'll put this up for the September 9th meeting.
That's good. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for finding efficiencies. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Okay, that ends the items on the committee of the whole. Once again, I will open up the meeting to general public comment. Is there anyone on this side that would like to make any comment? Is there anyone on this side that wants to make any comment? Okay, hearing no further public comment, I'm going to free everybody else up except the village board and staff. At 9:42 p.m., I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session pursuant to Section 2C5 of the Open Meetings Act to discuss purchase or lease of real property for the village's use.
So moved.
Second.
The motion to go into executive session was made by Trustee Cote, second by Trustee Kaluzny. Roll call, please.
Trustee Ketchmark?
Aye.
Trustee Cote?
Aye.
Trustee Hendricks?
Aye.
Trustee Niramatsu?
Aye.
Trustee Gahuli?
Aye.
Trustee Kaluzny?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned into executive session at 9:43. We are going to do the executive session in this room, so I'd ask that anyone not participating in executive